Hey, everybody. It's Jason. I know you've heard my voice many times in the podcast, and I'm here to tell you about something very interesting coming up. I want to let you know about an incredible opportunity for you to get free tips and strategies to build and monetize your personal brand. My good friend Rory Vaden is a New York Times bestselling author and Hall of Fame speaker, and he and his wife founded a company called Brand Builders Group. And they have put together a huge online summit where they're interviewing some of the most influential personal brands in the world on their never before shared secrets of how they became who they are today. So who's speaking at the summit? We've got Lewis Howes, got Michael Hyatt, Dennis Rodman, Kevin Harrington, Jay Baer, Donald Miller, and more. This is a rare opportunity for you to hear the stories about how they became New York Times bestselling authors, how they built high-paid keynote speaking careers, how they have grown massive online followings, and exactly what they have done to create large, multi-seven-figure businesses. If you're someone who is looking to create any type of influence, you have to check this out. It's totally free, and you're going to be learning from the masters who've actually done this. So I want you to encourage you to head over to the show notes today. And in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to this summit. Again, completely free. Take a look at it. I feel super confident you will find it valuable. And now, enjoy the episode. My guest on the show today is my friend, coach, speaker, trainer, Erin Conlon. Erin, prior to becoming a coach, she was actually an attorney. So I think you call yourself a recovering attorney. You worked with both individuals and multinational Fortune 50 corporations. Now her individual coaching clients are executives, leaders with impacts in many different sectors: legal, healthcare, consulting, education, entertainment. In addition to her coaching practice, Erin is also a podcaster. And she's the host of a podcast called This Is Not Advice, which is a brilliant title, and is a leader in training with accomplishment coaching. Erin regularly speaks and gives workshops on breaking up binary thinking, communicating your greatness, and boundaries for brilliance. Welcome, Erin. How are you?
I'm good. I thought you were going to say brown nosing for brilliance.
That could be a thing as well. Brown nosing for brilliance. I've spent as a fellow person who spent a lot of time in corporate. That's a thing for sure.
It is.
Brown nosing for fake brilliance, or as we call it, office politics. It's so good to have you on. We've been talking about this for a while, and here we are.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. I know we're gonna have a great time. So I think we should probably just get right into it. What do you think?
I'm all for that. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I really like the picture. The colors behind you are very nice.
Thank you. My friend Suzanne Stewart, the artist, follow her on Instagram, Suzanne Stewart Art, painted this for me. And it is like, just, I don't know, it's nice to be surrounded by a palette of color when I'm looking at Zoom.
Yeah.
I look at that more than my face.
Yeah. It's like kind of the opposite. Then everybody listening is not going to see this, but I have this like black and white photo of the Brooklyn Bridge in 4 sections that I really like, but it's not very colorful.
No, it's not.
So I'm already feeling a little judging of myself that you have way more color than me. So maybe we'll secretly compete with each other this entire episode. It'll be amazing.
I mean, isn't that what we're always doing a little bit anyways?
Absolutely. We're always one-upping each other. All right, Erin. But the good news is I can control. It's my episode, so I'm just going to control the hell out of it. This is you're on my ride now.
You know what? Hands up, buckled in. I'm ready to go.
You're ready to go. All right, Erin. So let's kick this off and talk about something that you nerd out about. So yeah, I know you nerd out about a lot of stuff, and I mean that in the best way. What's one thing that you nerd out about?
Oh my God. Well, comedy. I'm a huge comedy, like the nerdiest of comedy nerds. I love the technique of comedy. I love the very different genres of comedy. I love the art that goes into it. I love how what comedy actually is evoking a physical response in somebody that demonstrates their joy. It's very similar. Making somebody laugh is very similar to giving someone an orgasm. And I'm a big fan of it.
You're a big fan of both of those. So yeah.
I mean, I really am. I'm a people pleaser.
You're like, I like both of those things. Laughing, orgasms. It's all good. It's all right in your wheelhouse. All right. So I just talked about comedy with another guest this week. She is also a comedian, And we talked about this, so I want to ask you the same question. So first of all, can you stop being humble and say that you're actually a comedian as well? Let's not beat around the bush. You're actually somebody who performs comedy, you do improv, like you're a comedian in your own right.
Yeah, I did a lot of comedy. I've done 3 years of improv. I was in stand-up for many, many years. I have chops.
I have tried. I look at it, it's like, I love comedy, but I'm not going to tell you that I actually do comedy. So humble.
Well, it's a different kind of scene now with COVID. So I'm not like, I stopped going to and doing shows a few years ago, like right before COVID started, with the intention that maybe one day I would go back to performing. And I'm not doing Zoom shows and I'm not doing live shows. So I have a hard time saying that I'm a comedian still, but I also feel like it's kind of an identity and it's hard for me to say I'm not.
So let's talk comedy heroes. Who are your comedy heroes? Because what made me ask you this is it's not just the funny, but it's actually the technique of it. So who are your comedy heroes? So
my first comedy hero ever is Lucille Ball.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to hear a childhood story?
No, but you can tell me anyway. Yes, I do want to hear it. I'm kidding. Don't ask. Just tell me.
I used to wake up at like 5 or 5:30 as a kid and go and sneak downstairs and watch reruns of I Love Lucy on Nickelodeon while sitting on the heating vent.
At 5 a.m?
Yeah. I loved it. The house was quiet. Nobody was there. I have a lot of younger siblings and it was like my peaceful, joyful time.
Yeah.
I've seen every episode.
Yeah. I watched I Love Lucy growing up too. My grandparents, she's such a, I feel like she's known, but people that didn't grow up watching it, I don't know that show gets watched by a lot of people anymore who didn't grow up watching it. And she's kind of one of the OGs of female comedy, like her timing, her relationship with Desi, her husband, and then their neighbors, phenomenal.
Yeah. And, Carol Burnett would not exist without Lucille Ball, who would not exist, I just want to acknowledge the trailblazer that she was. She was building a media empire as a woman in the 1950s.
Right. Which wasn't a thing.
Right.
Which wasn't a thing. What anybody else that's a hero of yours?
A hero? I mean, I love Sarah Silverman. I think that she's really genuine and hilarious. And I appreciate Amy Schumer more now than I did before. It is hard for me to shit on any comedian. They might not be my bag of tea. I might not like them, their jokes that much, but it is hard work being successful in that industry. Yeah. And if you are willing to make yourself vulnerable in that way and show up every day in the way that you need to show up, then I automatically think that you're a badass. Yeah.
Well, it's like the old truth in comedy. There's something, being a comedian, you're kind of bearing your soul. All the only comedians I don't like when I'm like, this isn't really you.
Yep. Carrot Top, for example.
Yeah. Don't like Carrot Top either.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because there's nothing authentic about.
No, it's just he's a comedian, but it's half of it's a show. It's the things he does that's outside of that. I was talking to this with another guest. We're recording this the week of Monday was the 12th, September 12th. And there was a comedy show at Madison Square Garden this week. Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, Dave Attell, Colin Quinn, I think Tom Segura, and 4 other just phenomenal comedians. Oh,
was a woman on the lineup?
I don't know if there was actually. John Mulaney. And I share this because John Mulaney was up near where we live last Friday, and they've started a new thing that I think is really awesome for comedians. They give you this bag that you put your phone in and you can't use it during the show, and you can't get in unless you do it.
Yeah, I heard about that. Dave Chappelle was at Summerfest this past weekend. Summerfest is this big week-long or 2 weeks long festival in Milwaukee where they have vendors and concerts and whatever. And my neighbors went and they told me about those bags.
I love it.
It was kind of a pain, but it made us be more present.
So just to wrap on this thing, when John Mulaney was up here, he was at a place called Bethel Woods. It's the original site of where Woodstock took place in Bethel, New York. Okay. And there, the venue is hey, as part of the show tonight on Instagram, John and we have requested that you're going to use these things. Like it's a requirement. And there was a bunch of people that are like, this is America. You can't make us do that, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yes, we can. It is a private venue. It is John's show. And they're like, you can't make us do that. And like all these people attacked those people for being like, bro, put your phone away for a couple hours. Like, can you just like actually enjoy something besides having to film it? So that's a whole different thing. But I just thought it funny, like, you can't do that. I'm like, no, you definitely can. It is not federal property. It is not a public place that anybody can do what you want. The policies are set by these places. And my friend who I had on the show, she told me that a couple people broke out their phones anyway at the Garden, and Chappelle like literally saw them and literally stopped the show and said, security, take them out. They took them out. I'm like, yes, so awesome. So awesome.
It's kind of an interesting point. Like as a recovering attorney, I actually hear that as a legal issue. Like what people think that things are rights with a capital R that are not rights with a capital R. It's it's entitlement, and you are being righteously entitled, not violated.
Right. Like, this is not public property. It would be like me going to Erin's apartment or Erin's house and you're being like, hey, I prefer you in my house, there's no shoes. And I'd be like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm like, actually, you can. It's your property. Literally, you can.
Yeah, you don't have to come in. The other thing is you don't have to come in. If you don't want to play by the rules that exist, don't play. Go home.
Go watch John Mulaney's Netflix special. I'll enjoy the ticket to the live show.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
Right. I know we could geek out on comedy. I'm going to move us forward because otherwise we will just geek out on comedy because this is what I will end up doing. And then we'll be like, wow, that was a fun conversation with Erin and Jason about comedy. Erin, what's something that is inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's? And I'm taking doing stand-up comedy off of your list. I'm removing it from the ability to answer that. What do you got for us?
Something that's inside of my comfort zone that's outside of somebody else's that isn't comedy.
Performing comedy specifically.
Well, I'll take all public speaking off the table because I'm comfortable with that. I make a living on it. So that probably doesn't. You know what it is? Going on dates.
This is I'm you know,
I know this is your catnip, Jason, but I am so comfortable with going on dates.
Comfortable going on dates. Okay. Mm-hmm. I have no other questions about that, but I do have another question for you. What's something that's outside of your comfort zone that might be inside of somebody else's? And I really hope it's a follow-up to your answer of what you're comfortable doing. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I'm kidding. You can answer however you want, obviously. Yeah. So what's something like the reverse? Like what's something that's outside? Be like, hey, like that's really easy for people. You're like, oh my God, I have really struggled with that.
It's actually kind of the same. It's maintaining relationships. Like if there's a certain point for me where I'm like, I know enough.
I'm picturing you like dating, and after like 3 dates, you sit down and they're like, hey, you want to get together? You're like, I know enough. Like, that's it. That's the drop. You're I'm like a text message, or like, you're like at the end of the 3rd date, they're like, so we hanging out tonight? You want to have a drink at my place? You're like, I know enough.
I really would say something.
I can totally see you doing that. You're like, I've had my paralegal prepare the brief for the end of this date. I don't know. This is the settlement. The settlement is that I know enough. I don't believe that we're going to complete this merger. It's been real. I would like to thank you for all your efforts. And I just don't know that this is going forward, that this is the thing.
I mean, I like, it's not that I'm afraid of intimacy, but
no, yeah. You know what you want.
Well, and it makes like that, it's outside of my comfort zone. I live alone. I've been single for a really long time. It is uncomfortable for me to be in close quarters with people for long periods of time.
Do you consider yourself an introvert?
I'm a massive introvert. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot to be with people. When you date, trying to find you a partner here on the podcast.
Okay.
This is my secret. Well, when you date, do you prefer dating introverts or extroverts?
I don't care.
You don't? Okay. Because the reason I ask is I've had this conversation before. I know a lot of introverts are like, I really want an extrovert so that I can like have them kind of do a little more of the driving of the conversation, at least to start. I'm just curious.
That's not really the thing for me. Like driving conversation isn't an issue. Like I want somebody who's engaging. Like, I just actually want to meet somebody who I want to spend time with. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter to me whether they're an introvert or an extrovert, but what matters to me is that I'm not doing all the work.
Yeah.
And like, I was a lawyer, I have my own business. I am constantly taking care of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And part of what I like am dying to have is somebody who can show up and take care of me a little bit too.
Yeah. I think this is, we have a mutual friend that I've had this conversation with, who shall remain nameless. You may know who I'm referring to.
I think I have an idea.
You have an idea. You've probably spoken to her about this. She has the same thing, right? She's like, I take care of people all day. She's actually a licensed social worker too. So it's like, I literally take care of people all day. I don't want to have to take care of another kid or adult when I go on a date or when we have a relationship. I get that. I get that. I'm thinking about in my relationship, my marriage, and we don't really take that good of care of each other all the time. I think that's probably part of it. That's probably how we avoid it. Well, we try to, but we're both super, super independent.
Yeah.
Which creates probably a lot of good stuff and also some areas to take a look at, as we like to say.
Yeah. So maybe you have some comfort zone intimacy.
Oh, there's no doubt. I'm not. Oh, I mean, just because I'm the host doesn't mean I'm not over here like thinking for myself here. Last question on your dating life. Well, no, probably not the last question. The last question for this little section.
Okay.
What's the number one thing that will have you say yes when somebody asks you out? Like, what's the thing that will have you go like, yeah, it's cool? Because you said it's easy. You have no problem dating. What's the thing, if there's somebody listening out there, it's like, hey, she sounds cool. Like, let's give it a shot. What's the thing that will usually have you say yes?
Either a plan of something to do or like an express interest in me as a human being.
Yeah. I think those two things are both pretty low stakes.
Well, you would be shocked, Jason, how many people on Hinge, Bumble, Tinder, The League, OkCupid, all of them are like, hey, thanks for matching with me. Want to go on a date? And I'm like, why would I? Like, what's in it for me? If you tell me where we're going, maybe at least I'll know what I want to order.
Well, don't you think that's their opening? Like, don't you think that's like from a legal, that's their opening offer of like, hey, are you interested based on what you see about me? And then, so if it was me, I actually don't think that's strange. I'd be like, hey, do you want to go out? And then if I get a response of like, hey, yeah, maybe, what are you thinking? Then we could build something together versus like, hey, do you want to go to a comedy show? And you're like, well, I really like this girl. She seems great, but she hates comedy. I'm done.
Yeah. I think I'm more referring to this like very generic, like they're probably the third line that they ask everyone is want to meet up. Like, it's not about me.
You're getting spammed on dating apps is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Or like, there's just not a lot of connection in it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a lot to create connection between two people. All I could say is like, hey, I really liked this thing that you said on your profile. I'd love to learn a little bit more about it.
You're like, did you even look at my profile, or are you literally swiping right and then spamming me with a bot?
I think that they are. I also do think that there are bots out there, and like,
there are. Oh, there for sure are.
Like these like scammers who are like trying to find lonely women.
Yeah, catfishing. Yeah, I know somebody who got catfished on Bumble, and this guy, she's like, he's really nice, blah, blah, blah. We're going to meet up. And then all of a sudden, hey, you know what? I'm in Singapore and I can't access my American bank account right now. Could you wire me $500 so I can get out of the country? I'm like, catfish. But this is like a month. He played her for a month.
I don't even get that far with people.
Yeah. You're like, I've heard enough.
I mean, there's some really big clues. One is like, if their typing is terrible, there's like weird spaces. That's usually a sign to me that they are like probably a bot or a catfisher. There's like a grammar thing that happens.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of those catfishing people are out of the country. And then
they are. Yeah.
That's the second part, is they're always 6 miles away.
Always. Isn't that amazing how they're all right there?
It's so weird how many men who match with me live exactly 6 miles away.
Exactly 6. And you live in Chicago. Which is a very large metropolitan area that's statistically improbable that they all live 6 miles away from you. Like, do you live?
They all live in a circle. 6 miles away from me.
I wanna do a math here for a second before we move on. Do you live close enough to Lake Michigan that like part of it would be they'd be living in Lake Michigan if they're all 6 miles away?
A solid.
That's amazing.
I'm doing the math. 70 degrees of the circle.
You're like, I'm on a houseboat in Lake Michigan, like out in the middle of it, like we're 3 miles off the shore. That is amazing. That's amazing. This is just another topic that I think I could spend the next 30 minutes on. So I'm not going to, but I'd like to.
We can come back.
We'll come back. So let's take a really brief commercial break and we'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
Cool.
All right, Erin. What do you want us to know about you?
I think the thing I really want people to know about me that I just run into time and time again is that I'm not as inaccessible as I present myself to be.
I'm sensing a theme. There's a theme to all of your answers so far.
Yeah. Well,
expound upon that, please.
Like I have a bad habit of not texting people. And it is not because I do not care about them. Like I love my friends. I never text them. I love my family. My dad called me once and he was like, we haven't talked to you in a month. And I was like, sorry. Like if I get stuck lately, I've just noticed that I'm like doing my days and I don't think to text people and say hi. And that I think the feedback that I get from my friends and family is that it means people interpret that as like, I don't give a shit. And I give tons of shits.
Yeah. What's the disconnect then?
Well, to go back to relationships, I had a few dating relationships where I felt like I was doing a lot of the work. And I think I really like overcorrected.
Do you like to be chased?
And I do like to be pursued. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not just talking romantic relationships. I'm talking about like clients and maybe not like coaching clients, but in your corporate career, do you like when people are like, hey, Erin, we need you? Like that's a thing, right? It's like you want to be wanted and needed. And it's nice to have them be proactively like, hey, we need you. Yeah. Okay. Now we're getting to some good therapy. So when in your childhood was this? I'm kidding. But it's interesting because you had mentioned earlier that it's not that hard to connect. It's not that hard for people to connect with you if they just express it. But then it sounds like that's something you probably see in yourself too, is what it sounds like. And it shows up in the way that you like can appear to be distance from people, even though you're not.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could probably speak to this a little bit. Like I always say hi when you say hi to me.
Of course. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've never experienced this at all.
And it's not an ice out. And I can think of once or twice that I've actually texted you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Wow. Now I'm sad over here.
Jason, I do care about you.
Oh, thank you, Erin. I care about you as well. This is a very touching moment where we went from Erin's dating life to now we're having a moment. But no, I do find it interesting that, well, it sounds like you actually know this is what people want from you. And you're just like, is it just like a forgetfulness thing? Yeah. So just forgetfulness. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, part of the problem with managing as much as I manage all by myself, and I don't have an official assistant yet. And there's some things that I could probably outsource that I haven't.
Like texting your friends and family. You're like, here's a list of people. Can you send them a generic message from my phone?
Or I could have somebody else make my meals for me or take my dog for a walk or like some of those things that I don't need to do all by myself all the time.
Yeah.
But there's like a running list of things I need to do, and texting people is never on that list.
Yeah, I can see that. I can also see where it's a choice you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gotcha. So for all those who are listening and know Erin, dad and friends, like it's nothing personal is what I'm hearing. It's just like kind of your natural thing.
Well, yeah. And I think part of it too, just to be super frank, is at the point I am in my business, I am on the tipping point of like really cool growth.
Yeah.
And so it is important to me, coming from a career where I felt like a failure, to really embrace the success that I'm having. And so I have yet to have an experience in my life where I am very good at being successful professionally and personally. And I'm working on it. And COVID gave this like really great excuse for my introvert self to stay an introvert for 18 months.
Yeah.
And so like part of it is breaking up with that pattern that COVID created. Cause like I wasn't texting anybody because like, why? We're not going anywhere or doing anything. Hey, what are you up to? I just watched season 1 of Bridgerton. I liked it too. Cool. What are you watching? Younger. Oh, that's a great show. Like I can only have that conversation over text so much.
This is where you and I are complete opposites. If you're like, yo, what's up? I'd be like, so good to hear from you. Let's have a talk about nothing for an hour on text. Cause I'm 100% extroverted, like literally 100% extroverted on the Myers-Briggs. So like for me, like I'm wildly accessible on all electronic forms of communication most of the time. I'm overwhelmed when I don't respond. So for me, it's like, it is a like, ooh, that's the first time where I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'm not in my mode. I'm not in a good mode. Like when I'm not responding, people are like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. And I texted you. I'm like, oh shit, that means that I am overwhelmed. And that is actually my number one sign for it. But generally, if I'm not overwhelmed, I'm like, yo, you could text me, email me whenever you want, and I will probably make time for you. Yeah. But that's also core to like, I'm a connection person. That's kind of core to who I am. So I have my deficiencies in other places, but that's probably the thing. Like my wife's like, you're so available to everybody. I'm like, I know. That's right. And like, what she's actually saying is, but not as available to me.
You're available to everybody else. Not me. Like, what makes me special?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now I'm talking about myself. So now like you're a podcast host. So you ask people questions and interview people.
Yeah.
I would love to hand you the virtual hosting mic and have you ask me something. So what do you want to ask me that I can answer for you and everybody else listening?
What do you like about being married?
What do I like about being married? I like a lot of things about being married. This is an interesting question, and it's very timely because I just did another interview with someone, and one of the things that she wanted us to know about her was that she likes being married and she has a happy marriage. And we had a fun conversation. I won't spoil what her second thing was, but it was hilarious. I'll tell you after the episode. I won't spoil it for the listeners. What I like about being married is, for me, like I've been married now, by background, we got married in May of 2009. So that would be, I guess, 12 and a half years. What I like about being married is, the truth is, I like being married because I love my wife. I like being married to my wife. There is definitely a world where I could have never been married and I would have been totally cool with that. It just so happens that her and I have a really good partnership. And I say that after having an interesting discussion this morning that was really not a good partnership. Do
you owe your wife an apology?
We just need a further discussion about some things. We probably owe each other an apology, honestly, for like a misunderstanding. But I like being married because I like being married to her. I am not ever somebody, and I got married when I was 31. So I wasn't like, oh my God, I need to get married younger. I would not be mind if I wasn't married. Like I like people, but I'm super, like, I'm interesting. I love people, but I'm also super independent. And my wife is also super independent as well. She's also an extrovert, but she's probably more in the middle of extroversion. So I like having her as my best friend. I like that. I like raising a family. So we have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old in 3 weeks. He's turning 1 on October 4th.
No.
Charlie Bear. I know he's like a little, and he's huge. He's like a beast. He's living up to the bear name. I like raising a family together. That's a super fun thing. I just like having like a ride or die to go through life with, to build things with. So like to buy property together, or hey, like I'm running my own business like you are. She has a good job, and I really value her expertise and opinion on a lot of business things. It's really cool to have an in-house business consultant. She's a marketer and a salesperson. Like, hey, like, what do you think of this thing for my brand? What do you think of that? And I love that. And it's just really nice to have somebody that you can always rely on. Maybe not in the moment, but overall, we know each got each other's backs, even when it doesn't feel like it in the moment. And and having that partnership and somebody to experience life together, was the ups and the downs, the adventures. And so that's what I like about being married.
It sounds really fun. I would like
it is
that
fun.
too.
you will find it if you set your mind to it.
I don't know. I was dating pretty solidly, regularly for a long time. And I will admit that I haven't been dating that much this year, mostly because I haven't felt like anything is all that interesting to go to.
Sure. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, I get it. But it's, this is where you kind of also have to like give up the it's in your control thing. And like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, whatever that thing is for you.
Yep. That's why, like, I like to think of it as I regularly tell the universe that I am available, and hopefully, like, when that other person is also available, we can.
Yeah, that's how my wife and I met. Was definitely like a very much like, we kind of have and I won't share the story today. I've shared it on a few other episodes, but we like kind of had like a New York rom-com.
In each other's orbits.
In each other's, totally in each other's orbits. I threw a party. I was dating somebody else who had the almost exact same name as her at the time. It's kind of like a funny like sitcom thing. It actually was almost like a Friends episode. And then we only dated for 11 months and then got engaged and got married a year later. And this is after I'd gotten out of a 1.5 year relationship with a woman who had the exact same name as her minus one letter, which is really interesting.
Super easy to mess up.
Super easy to mess up.
Super easy to remember.
I did have a friend of mine who called her K2. She was not a huge fan of being number 2. And I said, well, we ended up getting married, so it all worked out.
Well, K2 is a mountain too. So
it is like a mountain.
It's an immovable, like solid. I would rather be K2 than K1.
We can justify this all we want. She was not a big fan of being.
I know,
like
it's
the
fine.
second.
I'm just.
You're like, no. We can make this positive. I'm like, it wasn't positive, but it was a joke. It was a joke. You're like, I dated an Erin, and then I dated the second Erin. I actually like the second Erin better, but I'm just going to call her Erin too because that's easier for me.
Yeah. I was thinking I've run out of men to date with 4-letter names, and most men are named with 4-letter names: John, Mark, Matt, Jeff.
I mean, yes, other than Jeff, if you want to take them from the gospel, from the New Testament.
I'm just thinking of like, Seth, there was a Seth. That's not gospel. Yeah.
That's not
Torah.
I think you're writing some good material in real time here. That's pretty, you're like, yeah, I dated the 4 apostles and I also dated somebody from the Torah. That's pretty good. Have you ever dated a Luke?
A Luke? I have not dated a Luke.
So you've dated Matthew. Have you dated a Mark?
I have not dated a Mark.
Have you dated a John?
Have I dated a John? I have dated. How are we? Yeah, I've gone on dates with Johns.
So you've hit 2 of the apostles. You have 2 to go, but you have hit somebody from the Torah.
I had a solid relationship with somebody from the Torah.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. All right, Erin, let's see. What do I want to ask you next? Let's talk about something that you're like, share with us something that you're passionate about.
Like a political topic or just like anything that I'm passionate
about? If you could just share with us your opinion on the 2020 election, vaccines and mask, that would be fantastic. No, what I'm actually asking is more like, well, I know, like, can I give you something that I know I want to actually hear about this from you. Like, I know you're passionate about what you do with specifically with like people that used to be you, right? Like you used to be that attorney who was quite miserable. Unfulfilled. Yeah. Use the word miserable. Yeah. I'm curious. Like, I'd love to hear and have all of us hear a little bit more about that. Like, what is the sort of work you do with people that used to be you?
Yeah, well, I don't only work with lawyers, but I do work with a lot of women who are stretched super thin. And what I love about what I do is the shift in how we are, like changing people's perspective of their experience so they can be doing the same thing from a totally different place and love it. Because I have it that you don't go to law school for 3 years if you really fundamentally hate the law. And what you've lost along the way is like the connection to why would you? Why is this important to you? And what's your bigger vision? Because a lot of times what happens for people is other people's vision becomes their goal. And they're like, why am I doing this? So, getting people enrolled in what they're up to and why they matter and why their role in this thing is important is my jam. Having people see beyond like what they expect to happen and into what they want to happen, also my jam.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
Bringing people's creativity into it. What I found is that like the more you take care of yourself, the more creative you are, the better you will feel in your life and the more you will accomplish.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about some attorneys I know. I think this is true for corporate, but then this is me as an outsider. But my impression is that attorneys are notoriously bad at taking care of themselves from like a well-being and wellness perspective because of the workload. It's a lot of work.
And so there's this thing, you have a time money thing. You bill so many hours, you get this much money. If you bill this many hours over your baseline, you get this much money. Everyone kind of has this large goal that they're going for. And then what happens is people conflate how much money they have with their actual value in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so that more thing trains them to think, oh, this is how I'm valuable.
Mm.
And so why would you take care of yourself when the value that you are creating for yourself is external and out there?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, that's the way the system is set up.
Yeah. The system's set up to burn people out.
Yeah. But make a lot of money and then burn themselves out and have health issues. I mean, you can.
It's not a very long-term system.
No.
It's a shitty long-term game. And then people who stay long-term, like they're beat up, they're miserable. So they're leading from this place where they're like grumpy and cynical. And so then they're training people below them to expect grumpiness and cynicalness in their future. So of course people are out.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. So what, if we could go a little bit deeper here, what kind of work do you like? Let's say that I said, hey, I know this person. This sounds like somebody that would be great for you, Erin, to work with. What do you do with them? Like what kind of things are you looking at with them?
The first thing I'm looking at is like, all right, what's your day-to-day like? What is missing for you? Then I'm going to look at how are you already great? What makes you what makes you already great? And then from that place, all right, if you are already great and these things are missing, if we put those things back or added more, what would your life look like? And then is that where you actually want to be? Because somewhere in there, if that's not where you want to be, then there's an opportunity to reinvent.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's powerful. And it doesn't sound like a long-term thing. It sounds like something you could like work on for a couple hours and get like really make some progress quickly.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot to change your life. You have to be willing.
Yeah. Well, that's the first thing. You have to be willing.
You have to be willing, and you have to like be open to the idea that things don't have to be a certain way. Like the isness of how things are, it annoys me. It's all like money isn't real, but we all pretend it's real because it's real to us, but it's like not.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the, reminds me of the Zig Ziglar thing. I don't know if you've heard this before. I think it was Zig Ziglar said, everybody knows that money won't make them happy, but everybody wants to find it for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are those studies that say at a certain point, money will actually make you happy. I think it's around 80.
It's about 80K
80
now,
grand
yeah.
a year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because it kind of affords you the lifestyle that speaking from somebody who lives in New York City, that is not enough money. But like for most areas of the country, $80,000 will get you kind of what you want. It'll meet your needs.
Money. Mm-hmm. It's enough money where you're not stressed and you can have fun, but it's not so much money where it's a burden or a responsibility. And it's not like a keeping up with the Joneses level of money.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I grew up.
Keeping up with the Joneses?
No, more like I think my dad was a city manager, so his salary was public in the in the local town newspaper. So I think he made about $70,000 a year. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and as a kid, I never wanted for anything in terms of like we didn't get everything I wanted, but we never felt I never felt sort of like, oh, we don't have what we want or what we desire. So as a kid, and of course as a kid you don't really understand, I don't think, until you get to a certain age, but that's cool. I know you do important work, and I want to acknowledge you. I think that's it's a really needed thing in the legal industry. Like I know you work with other people outside the industry, but like specifically where you came from, it's like it just seems like this is a very necessary thing. I'm thinking about one friend of mine who's an attorney. I'm just like, wow, she doesn't look happy. She works for a big corporate.
Send her my way, Jason. Give me an hour with her. I will change her life just in an hour.
I will actually talk to her. I'm going to see her this weekend.
Well, I do actually, my larger mission is to transform the way the legal industry leads.
The leadership inside the industry.
Mm-hmm. I'm on the precipice of that, and
beautiful.
I'm really excited about it. And I do think that, oh man, if the brain power of lawyers could actually be focused on possibility rather than defensiveness, could you imagine how cool things could be?
That would be amazing, because it's a bunch of really smart people, in my opinion. Most of the lawyers I know, very smart, very capable. And like you said, most of them are very beaten down by themselves, by the system, by whatever the thing is.
Yeah, their experience is super determinative.
Yeah. All right, Erin, what's the thing that you're most proud of?
Changing my whole life. I'm super proud of like transforming from, an attorney and comedian to who I am now. Mm-hmm. I'm proud of my business. I'm proud of my staying afloat. During a pandemic. Like, yeah. I was really worried about myself for a while. I'm proud of my resilience.
That's awesome. Are you proud of your dog?
I do love my dog, and most days I am proud of her, but sometimes I'm so embarrassed by her because I get on the phone and she's like, "This is my time."
Yeah. Animals give no F's, but the one of the nice things with COVID and going virtual, like I think what you and I do, we're generally virtual anyway, but like I have clients that show up with their animals. I'm like, I love it. I'm like, this is cool. Like, this is who you are. Your dog is a big part of your life. Mm-hmm. Why shouldn't she show up on a call to say hi? Or like, is anybody like, I'm paying you for your time, Erin. If you could please chain your dog. Like, I think most people like love seeing animals on cameras for a little bit, at least, as long as it's not like completely distracting.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that is distracting about my dog is not her showing up on camera. It's her bark. It is very annoying bark. And it's like that puppy bark that is on the verge of real dog barking, but it's not at real dog barking yet. So it's loud and squeaky. Yeah.
It's a tough time in a dog's life when they're going through puberty and their voice is changing. It
really is.
It's very embarrassing. Embarrassing.
They need a lot of attention, but they don't know how to ask for it in an effective way.
And they're at the dog park and they're sniffing butts and they're like, I think I want this, but I'm just not quite sure. Yeah. It's a very challenging time in a dog's life.
Yep. And she's learned how to hump. And so she's in a humping phase.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Domination. Yeah. I love it.
It's super hilarious to watch this like little girl puppy go hump big dogs. It's like, why are you doing this? What is the point of you humping this Doberman?
She's like, bitch, you don't know the point of this. I'm dominating this MFer. That's hilarious. All right, Erin, what's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
Oh, that I'm dumb. I always am like, wait, was that dumb?
Do you actually believe that that's true about you? Like, are you
Sometimes.
afraid of that sometimes?
Yeah. I mean, for example, the other day, my phone fell off of my bed while I was sleeping and the screen cracked and it had a screen protector on. And I'm like, what idiot can break their phone with a screen protector while sleeping? Like,
Yeah, really. I'm questioning this as well. This seems you may be onto something here. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, but things like that, like, or I'm just always a little bit afraid that people will like decide I'm full of shit.
The listeners are going, I think Erin's really authentic. I think this other dude over here may need to look in the mirror about some of these things we're talking about today. That's an interesting thing. Do you think any of that comes from like being highly educated?
I do. I think a lot of it does because, the kind of work that we do is so intangible and it is not based in like citations.
No.
And so,
you're like, I hired Erin as my coach. And because of that, I made an extra $63,050. Like there's no way to actually quantify that, right? Like it's a very qualitative type of work that we both do.
Yeah. And like you might get promoted and make another 50 grand a year, but like what actually happens 10 years from now?
Right.
Because of the work that you did with me this year.
Right.
Like that intangibility, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, there's no way to tell. All right. Let's see. How do you see the world?
That's a nice obtuse question.
Yes. This is what we do here on the show. We being me, because it's my show.
Yeah. How do I see the world? I think I see the world as filled with possibility and opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't really see it as dangerous. And I know a lot of people do, but that's not my experience of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that comes from a place of privilege. And I do think that the world can be incredibly unfair, but I don't think it always is that way.
If I was to ask you this question 10 years ago, what do you think your answer would have been then? And I have no idea what you're doing 10 years ago, other than I believe you're in your corporate career, right?
I was in my corporate career. I think I would have said it's a struggle. Like it's hard.
The world is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would have seen the world as probably more unfair than I currently do.
Mm-hmm.
And back then we were still going through the Great Recession and there was a lot of not enough around.
Yep.
And that really shaped my experience too.
Yeah. Right, Erin. How can we connect with you, find you? And I'm asking this tongue in cheek. How can we, I don't know, text you, find you? How can we get a quick response from you? Erin, if we could just have your Slack environment, your text message, if you're on Discord, if you're on Signal, how can we like barrage you with messages to make sure that you get back to us very timely?
Wait, what? Discord and Signal?
You're like, what are these things? I'm giving you a little bit of shit here. Yeah. How can people find out more about what you do? Like, well, obviously let's talk about the podcast. Yep. The podcast.
I have my website, erinconlon.com. On that website is my email address, erin@erinconlon.com, and my phone number. So you can actually text me at 312-715-8227. And then, I'm on Instagram. I have 2 accounts, Erin_Conlon_ and at this.is.not.advice, which is my coaching and podcast account.
Cool.
Those are some pretty solid ways to get in touch with me, or you can just call me or put time on my calendar. That's what I really need to do is just like have a Calendly on Bumble and be like, set up time.
That is a brilliant idea. But then you got to have an intake form before like they get to that point though. There's got to be some sort of additional intake.
Yeah. It'll be like, here's your application. And then when somebody passes, I'll be like, okay, here, set up time. I'll set up like a date schedule, Wednesday evenings and Saturday afternoons. Not
You're like
football.
Wednesday evening, I'll be sitting at this bar. I'll be the girl in the green tank top. I'll be there. I've got 4 slots available. If you see somebody sitting there with me, you can
just wait.
You're right. You can likely be assured that it's going well. If you see nobody sitting next to me, you can actually come earlier because it means that person you've seen enough.
I've seen it. I've heard enough. I know enough.
I've heard enough. I know enough. So yeah, check out the podcast. Your podcast is deep, can be funny. It's great. Like you're not really giving advice, although sometimes there's some advice, which I definitely
have my know-it-all tendencies.
Yeah. No, it's great.
I
love
mean
it.
to.
No, it's great. It's just like, hey, like people want to know stuff from you, Erin.
Yeah.
All right. So website. If somebody texts you or gets in touch with you, how long will they wait before you get back to them?
As long as I am not working, usually within 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Your family's like, you suck.
No, but you have to like ask me a specific question.
Yeah. Not like, hey girl.
Yeah. Sup doesn't get a response.
Sup. You're like, what do you actually want besides like bothering me?
Yeah. Excuse me. Is there an agenda to this meeting?
They're like, yeah. What's the latest show you've watched on Netflix? I really want to know.
Okay, look, here is the show that I really have been talking about all year. It's younger. It's on Hulu. It was like one of those MTV shows. It's about a 40-year-old divorcee who gets back into the publishing industry and pretends to be 26. There's 7 seasons of it. It's a delight. I highly recommend it. Watch that show.
Sounds like my version of hell. Just going to say it. I'm rewatching The Sopranos, so sounds a little bit different. So it sounds like there might be a little bit of difference there.
Yeah, different tone. Totally different tone.
Totally, a little bit different tone. All right, last thing, Erin. So first off, thank you so much for being on with us today. It's been a delight to talk to you, give you some covert or not so covert crap. You give me some covert crap back. This is Erin and I's relationship. You can tell we hopefully get along well. If I text you, you do respond to me. So I will actually make it a practice to reach out to you more with something more than sup. And I want you to leave us, if you would, with some words of wisdom, some short and sweet words of wisdom from and if you want to give us some advice, I'm down for some advice too.
Okay. Here's some advice, Jason. Actually, the words of wisdom that I have are, it's a Post-it note that's in front of me. And I got them from a conference a couple of years ago. And it's keep your power, use your power, share your power.
Keep your power. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's like great advice. And also it's a reminder that you always have the opportunity to empower yourself.
Yeah. Amazing, Erin. Congratulations on everything that's going on with the podcast, with the business, the difference you're making in the world. Future manifestation. Congratulations on the relationship successes.
Oh,
we'll have you back on again to see what's up with that. Again, if there's any interested parties, she's website, her phone number's on there. My only request, Erin, is that if you get anybody who asks you out within 6 miles, probably 6 miles, you're like, wait, this person's 7 miles. They're obviously not, they might not be a bot.
They can't be a bot. If it's 7 miles, it can't be a bot.
If you create some sort of date for my podcast, this whole year will be a success in the podcast. So you have to let me know.
Okay. You know what I'm going to start doing, Jason? I'm going to send potential dates this link so that they listen. It's a win-win for both of us.
That is because they're going to have to spend an hour with you to be like, hey, do I like this person? And yeah, I love that.
They'll learn so much about me and you get a new audience member.
There you go. Oh, the win-wins are everywhere. Thanks so much, Erin. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.